My number one influence, I think, as my life as a storyteller had to do with my mother. And I think it's the fact that she came over from Hong Kong to go to school in the US, and was a huge reader back in Hong Kong, and would read all the classics in Chinese. And I always remembered hearing her tell me, they read, because it was Chinese characters, they read up and down, right to left. And I was kind of fascinated in all this because we're opposite, right? I'm reading, from left to right. And I remember being young and already being kind of taken by that story. And I think that for the rest of my life growing up, until she passed away, she gave me talk stories, something Maxine Hong Kingston, I think, coined. When you're hearing the stories of the past, and she loved art, she painted, she wanted to write also, and she grew up during a time, I think, that was very difficult to be an Asian woman wanting to be an artist in Hong Kong. So when she came over, she actually was an art major when she finished college, but had told me all the stories about growing up. And actually one story was based on her brother, the Samauri'S Garden, my second book. And that he had been ill, that he had gone to my great-grandfather's beach house to recuperate from what they thought was TB at the time. So it was all those kind of things. And after I'd written my first book, I had no idea what I was going to write about. I didn't want to write about myself. I certainly wasn't going to write about my family because they had all immigrated to America and they were all here now. So I just suddenly sat there and one day thought, I remember the story my mother told me. He was her favorite brother. He wanted to be a painter. It was all the little seeds of curiosity that were planted for me. And so it was that that began so much about my spending a great deal of time of researching and going back, and and all led to the books moving forward. But it all began, I think, with her. Her talk stories, her loving to read, how she transferred that love of reading to me. And I would say that was probably the seed that got me growing as an author. It's based on my uncle. Stephen certainly isn't my uncle because I didn't actually know him. He passed away very young. So he's my fictional character of my uncle. So I have a book coming out next month in June 20th, and it's called The Brightest Star, and it's based and inspired by the life of Wong, the first Asian American movie star in early Hollywood. And I would also say, it was great company during the pandemic, for one. But the inspiration for that is, I don't know if you were watching that series, Killing Eve. Yeah, I was watching Killing Eve, and the first season was just, I thought, fantastic. And why I really thought it was so great was because Sandra Oh was the leading actress in it. And I always loved Sandra Oh as an actress, but what I loved in particular about Killing Eve was the fact that they used an Asian actress to be an MI6 agent in Britain. I was so enchanted with the fact that they would use an Asian actress in a role in which normally would be an actress of another color, and never once is her being Asian addressed in that. And I thought to myself, this is what acting should be like. This is what all actors should be like. And it got me thinking about the first Asian American actress who might have been in Hollywood, and of course brought me back to Shanghai Express that I had seen. And I began researching and realizing, that she had this huge history that was not only about the complexities of being entering Hollywood at that time as an Asian American woman, but about the yellow faces and all that she endured then. But it was about her complex family relationships, the laws at the time that kept her from being a big movie star, that she could never be a leading lady because she could never kiss a leading man, and at the same time, she was never Chinese enough for the Chinese, and she was never American enough for the Americans. So it was just fascinating for me to be able to dive into that, and figure out how to write her story. I realized that there wasn't a lot written about her, at the time, and it was just so fortunate in the last year. I mean, Quarters came out with her on it. And the latest thing I heard was Mattel's making a Barbie doll of Anime Wong. As I was writing, I thought, well, I've got to keep it in third person. And I almost immediately realized that I needed her voice to be intimate. And I needed to somehow write it in first person. So she is, and what was greatly helpful is the letters I was able to get from Yale University, from the Benetke Library. And, it was pandemic and I couldn't go to the Yale Library. So, I was able, and thank God for the internet, when you look back now, that they were able to send me all the letters through internet. And I just read and reread her letters, that she was writing to her dearest friend in New York, and talking about her life and talking about art and talking about, and to get her voice down, and I read and read. And when I felt that I was comfortable with her voice, I just started writing. And the first thing that came out will be the first page of the book, which is a prologue, and it's 1 page long, and it's just her voice. And to this day, I'm not sure where it came from. It was just like, where did this voice come from? But thank you, it set the tone, it set the tone for me that this would be the tone of voice that would go through the entire book. Even though she's, and that every interim of her life story would be a present day where she's in this train reading from her journal in her voice, her grown-up voice. So when I figured the structure out, it began to work in that way where I could pick and choose what I would write about. But it's always frightening because nobody knows what happened behind those closed doors. We don't know what she said to this person or that person. So as fascinating as it was, being able to write about that, it was still as frightening as it was, because I'm always questioning myself of how dare you do this. On the other hand, by doing it, it gives her a voice again.